All right, let's go ahead and get started with our YNAB Q&A. So today we are mostly talking about getting our budget set up. So setting up our categories and our targets. So that's the point that we should be at. But first off, if we haven't met before, hi there, my name is Lindsey Ciarrocca. I am a YNAB certified coach and a certified money coach. And I am here to help you learn to love budgeting, especially using YNAB, and create a more positive relationship with your money. That's what I help my students do inside my membership on School, which I'll leave a link to below if that sounds interesting to you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Our first question today is, how many categories should I have in YNAB? And the answer is, it depends, right? When you're first getting started, I would go with less is more. So I would start with your fixed monthly expenses, so those bills that come out every single month, your variable expenses, things like gas, groceries, dining out. I like to think about those as something you spend some amount of money on every single month or most months, right? So obviously you need gas and groceries most months. For me, it would be pet food, cat food. But then there's clothes. For me, I don't spend money on clothes every month, but maybe you have kids who are growing and you do. So maybe that is in your variable expense category. Then the other category group that I would suggest is those fixed non-monthly expenses. So things like your Costco membership that bills once a year. Maybe you have a AAA membership. Maybe you have home and auto insurance. Maybe if you don't pay for those monthly, if they come out every 6 months or every once a year, those should go in there. Those are things that you know will come, you know what date it is, and you know how much it will be, so you can prepare for it. So again, not really a great answer as far as there is no set number. It totally depends on you and your situation and how much data you want to see. I have obviously probably more categories than the average person, but that's me. That's the budget nerd in me. For example, I have a travel category group, and then underneath that category group, I have transportation, accommodation, and then I go so far as to split out food in the form of groceries versus dining out. And then I also have an entertainment or, activities category under that. So those are all under the main travel category group because I like to break things down like that. I've had clients who, for them, that is too much. That's too much to deal with. And they don't really care. Maybe they don't need to know. I find it interesting. But for them, they just want one single travel category. So anything that they spend while they are away from home goes into that one category. One thing to note is I would say let the categories earn their place in your budget. So every time a new expense comes in, if you don't have an exact category for it, you don't necessarily need to add one. One of the most common examples I use is postage stamps, right? How often do you buy postage stamps in your personal life? For most of us, maybe once a year. So you don't need a separate category for postage stamps. That can go in your miscellaneous category. If you're doing a business budget and you do a lot of mailings, maybe it does need a separate category, and I do have a separate postage category in my business budget. If you get to the point where you are getting to a miscellaneous category that every month you're just categorizing $300, $400, $500 into miscellaneous, that would be when I would suggest to dig a little deeper. What is actually going into that category? Because honestly, anything over $100 is a good chunk of money in your budget that you should be accounting for. My miscellaneous category is about $25 a month, I think. So if you get to the point where you're just throwing things into miscellaneous, I'd take a deeper dive into that and see what it is and if there's anything that needs to be separated out. Another note on this is, like I mentioned, it depends on the information that you're trying to see. I've worked with a client who she worked between two different states. So she lived in Maryland, but worked between Maryland and Delaware and would stop for her Dunkin' Donuts coffee. She knew the price difference between how much it cost in Maryland versus how much it cost in Delaware. But she didn't realize how much that $4 a day was adding up to until we separated it out into its own category, and she was able to see those numbers adding up. And that's where it brought visibility to it, so she could start to work on spending less in that category. So that would be another example of when it makes sense for something to have its own category. If it's something you're trying to bring up a lot of awareness to and maybe try to cut your spending down on. Okay? All right, so next question is, should I have categories for things I want or just the basics first? Obviously, you definitely need your basics, like I mentioned before, fixed monthly expenses, variable expenses, and those fixed non-monthly expenses. But even in the beginning, I would recommend having some sort of fun category. Maybe it's you and your spouse and you each get $20 a month to do whatever you want with, guilt-free, no questions asked. Honestly, in the beginning, when I started, me and my husband started, we were looking at like $5 a month. So something small, something to treat yourself, because you don't want to start looking at your budget as something that is restrictive. That is not what we're going for here. Your budget should be something that gives you complete and total clarity over your money, but also the power to make decisions and feel confident that you have all your bills covered, but you can spend on some of those fun things and not feel guilty about it. So, depends on your situation as to maybe how much extra money you have in your budget to start out, but at least give yourself a little bit of fun money in the beginning, because, right, we're here, we're meant to be living and thriving in this life, not just surviving. So give yourself a few dollars to go spend on a nice coffee or an ice cream cone or whatever it is. Maybe a bouquet of flowers. Whatever makes you happy, put a little bit of money aside there for you to be able to spend that, and then spend it guilt-free. Okay? All right, so like I mentioned, today we're talking about categories and targets. So why are categories and targets so important in the first place? And this is where we're shifting from mental bank account math, where you look at your bank account and you say, cool, I have $2,000 in there, I have $10 to go out to lunch. But in reality, do you? That's the question. So when you are able to take that money and split it out into categories within YNAB, you're able to easily see maybe $1,500 of that needs to be earmarked for your rent next week. And then another couple hundred for your cell phone and, a couple of bills. And you're left with maybe $200 for all the other things that you need to spend your money on before you get paid again. So that's where the categories become really helpful. It gives you that granularity, that clarity to be able to see exactly, this is how much money I have for each category. Okay, as far as targets are concerned, that is what gives you an idea of how much money you need to be bringing in each month so that you can set enough aside for each of your goals. So without targets, you just have categories that need some amount of money, but you're not sure. So where targets come into play is you're telling YNAB, this is how much money I want to put into this specific category every month. Okay, so here you can see we have our budget, and this is where targets come in handy. So they give you this visual cue of whether or not you have the money you need in a certain category. So for example, for your mortgage category right here, you need $1,250 to pay that bill. You can see under the assigned category, you have put that much in there, and now this has turned green, and it has a checkmark here. It's turned green because it's a happy category, I like to say. It's happy, it's green, it has the money that you need, that you said you wanted to put into it. Let's say you only put $1,000 in here. It will be yellow because it's giving you a little warning that says, hey, you told me you want to put $1,250 in here, but you only put $1,000. You can see this is a little pie chart, so it's saying not quite all of that money is there yet. So it gives you that visual reminder of both the color and the pie chart to say, hey, this category needs more money. Once we put that $250 in there, we're green and happy. The other way targets are important is, so look at this category. We have this category here, and it is gray. And I like to say that green and gray categories are usually the happy categories. In this case, gray, you have to watch a little bit, because in this particular case, this category does not have a target, does not have any money in it, so it's gray, so it could be happy, but it's not necessarily, because you do need that $7.99 to pay that bill, but you don't have a target, but it's gray, right? So you don't, it's a little easier to skim over that and see, oh, there's no notification there, if you will, that says I need to put money in here. The reason I say green and gray categories are happy is because, let's say we add our mortgage payment in. Since we had that $12.50 there before, we spent the $12.50. So now you can see that this one is also gray. So it's a little bit of a difference, but you can see that this one is gray and happy, but it has a check mark, and these two columns cancel each other out, basically. So that's a happy category because we needed $12.50, we put $12.50 in there, and we spent $12.50. However, this category is gray, but not so happy, because we do, in fact, need that money there. So that's just something to watch out for. So that's why targets are really important. Plus, once you have targets set on everything, that's a really important place to start. The system will add up all of these numbers for you. And that is what is shown here in this cost to be me section. So January's targets total $5,885.44. And just note that that is what's left to be funded. So for example, this category has money in it, so everything else, it's adding up all of those numbers. So you can look at this and see, am I bringing in basically $5,900 each month? If not, you need to adjust your targets a little bit and or increase your income. So this is where it gets really important to play with those targets in the beginning to make it match basically what you're bringing in, so that you can be funding your categories properly. Targets really help give you a visual as to if you have the money you need in a category. So when you have a target on a category, what you've essentially done is you've told YNAB, I want to put this much money into this category each month. And if you don't have that money in there, it will give you a bit of a visual reminder. All right, for our next question, how often should I be checking YNAB? In the beginning, I recommend you check it at least daily. This is just to start building the habit of looking at your plan in YNAB to be able to see, do I have this money available for whatever I'm looking to buy? And then also just going through and taking care of your transactions. Depending on your volume of transactions, maybe you'll only have 1 or 2 a day. Some people spend a lot and have 10 to 20 a day, I've seen. So if you let that go for a couple days and you come in and you see 45 transactions ready to give categories to, that can be overwhelming. So again, in the beginning, I really recommend going in every single day, just taking a brief look, categorizing any transactions, giving it a quick reconcile, and then just looking over your budget to see where you have money available. As you move through and get used to it, using YNAB and once you get to the point where you have some extra money and built your buffer between your paychecks, maybe you don't need to look at it every single day. But definitely in the beginning, I really recommend you try to do it every single day. You could try to match it with a habit you already have. So if you sit down with a cup of coffee every morning, just pull it up on your phone and take 5 minutes and scroll through, look at it, approve some transactions, and you're good to go. All right. What are some expenses I might be forgetting about? Some of these I've already mentioned. These are ones like the things that bill on an annual basis that you may not be top of mind. That Costco membership, that AAA membership, Sam's Club, things like that. If you don't pay your home and auto insurance monthly, that should go in there. those are kind of the fixed bill side of things. But the other side of things to look at is things like gifts. Right? You will likely spend some money at some point on maybe a wedding gift or a birthday gift or a Father's Day, those types of gifts. I personally have Christmas in an entire separate category because it's a bigger expense. Maybe you want to look, maybe birthdays are a big thing for your family, so you want to look at, maybe it makes sense to have a separate birthday category for your family. For me, it's just a few people here and there, so it all just goes in a general gift category. Another tricky one can be any subscriptions that are billed directly through Apple is a great example, because they'll just come through as Apple. Maybe it's Peacock, maybe it's Spotify, maybe it's even your YNAB subscription, but they all just come through as Apple. And that can get really confusing and frustrating to categorize each one of those every single time. So if at all possible, I would recommend moving the payment off of Apple and directly to your credit card so that the transaction comes through as Spotify or Peacock. So it's much easier to categorize. You can create that rule in YNAB so it knows where to put it. That's just another one too, if you have any apps that also bill annually in Apple or in your subscription, Google Play, whatever you're using. That could be one that gets missed as well. Then you might want to start thinking about certain categories that we talk about in the YNAB world called true expenses. I had a friend ask me once, how do you prepare for a car bill when you don't know what it's going to cost or when it's going to come up? And the answer is you start putting aside something. If that's $20 a month, it's $20 a month. That's where we started, into just one pot. But think about it in the sense that everything in your life needs maintenance, whether it's a car, your home, you personally, there'll likely be medical bills. Cats for me, pets specifically, have medical bills at some point, even just the annual vet bills. All of those things will have expenses at some point, but we don't know how much or when. So the idea is just to start building up some amount of cash, because if you're working so hard to pay down debt and not putting anything aside, when that expense pops up, it's still going to feel like an emergency. Whereas if you have $300 sitting there, it's less of an emergency. Maybe you still have to pull some from other places, but you have some just waiting there. I'll give you an example. About a year ago, our cat started acting a little funny. This is the cat that loves to be held, loves to be cuddled, purrs all the time. And one afternoon, she was not purring. Even when she was on our lap and we were petting her, she was not purring. And we immediately knew something was wrong. So, long story short, we found out she was diabetic. So she was having really high blood sugar, not feeling well. We had to get her put on insulin. And this was actually after a couple rounds of blood work and an emergency vet visit that we found all this out. So that ended up costing us about $1,200 over the course of a couple months. But we had that money sitting in a pet medical bill category because we know our cats are getting older. So for the last couple of years, we've just been putting money into that category every month and letting it build. And unfortunately, we ended up having to go on, and she had to have dental surgery, had 4 teeth pulled, and also is on special kidney food. So we spent a good chunk of money, over $3,000 on cat medical bills last year. But we only had to pull a tiny amount, only about $900 from somewhere else, because that is a line item in our budget that we plan for. The other thing I just want to note on this is don't try to fixate on getting every single category exactly perfect when you're just starting out. Usually I tell people it'll take you a good year to really go through an entire cycle of your life and see what expenses come up, what makes sense to have its own category, what doesn't, and adding and editing and making changes. But that's the beauty of YNAB, is that you can always add, edit, change, remove, move money around. It's so easy. And because you can do that, you're easily able to see, I have my bills covered, but I can still move a couple $100s from here when I need to fix the air conditioner, for example. So don't try to get it perfect, because it will never be perfect. Your budget is fluid. Just like your life is changing, your budget is always going to be changing as well. So don't let that stop you from getting started. All right, next question. Do I really need to set a target for every single category? My answer is yes. The only exception to that might be your interest and fees category. So we don't want to be paying interest. In the beginning, you likely may have to be paying interest, but we don't really want to target on that. So if there's anything that you are actively trying to put money towards every month, I would have it put a target on it. There are different types of targets too, so you may need a different type, but the easiest one is just to say, I want to put X number of dollars here every month, so that you can always know that I'm putting something towards that category. All right, these last couple ones aren't specifically target and budget category related, but fun questions anyway. When do you use desktop versus mobile? For me personally, I use desktop for 99.8% of everything I do. Just because I like the bigger screen, the layout, I can see more information, it's easier for me. I just personally like to use a computer for most things. The times I use mobile are when we're on the go, and I either need to check and see, is there money in a category? So maybe we're doing a quick stop at the grocery store. How much money do we have in that category ready to spend? Or the other one would be to add a transaction on the go. There's a lot of times it makes more sense, especially things like dining out, where it's a great idea to get in the habit of just entering that transaction real quick on the go. Especially if there's a tip that's added on top of it, that can really help you see in real time, oh, I just spent $50 there. That takes that from your category, so you can look at your actual category and see what you have available for the rest of the month. You don't have to wait a day or two for the transaction to come in. So that is how I personally do it. I do know there are people who completely use YNAB on mobile, so whatever works for you, but that's what works for me. Next question, should I have a separate budget for my business? Absolutely. You really should not be commingling business and personal finances. So you should have separate bank accounts, separate checking accounts, separate credit cards for your personal and business if you are a business owner. And then you can also have separate budgets for them. And that's, again, nice thing about YNAB is you only need one subscription. Within your one subscription, you can have multiple different plans or budgets. When I say plan and budget, those are interchangeable. It's always used to be budget. It changed to plan about a year ago, so I'm still in green to say budget. But you can have multiple different plans within your one subscription. So personally, I have our personal budget. I have a budget for this business, and then my husband and I also have a second business together, so that also has its own one. So we have 3 budgets within YNAB, and they all, in my brain, they're almost like, they really just think of separate things. They are all separate. Yes, money flows between them, mostly to pay ourselves to the personal budget, which brings me to our last and final question. How does self-employment income work in my personal budget? Just like any other income. When money comes into a budget, for the most part, there's a couple exceptions here, but for the most part, it gets put into ready to assign. It's just like a paycheck. It doesn't matter if it's a paycheck from you because you're self-employed or your employer because you're at a W-2 job. It is money that's coming into your budget. It gets categorized as ready to assign, and then you move through the categories as you need. Okay, those are all our questions for today for the category set up, the target set up, the first half of really getting your budget structure set up before you start linking accounts and starting to budget your money. If this was helpful, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe, and I would love to see you on another video. And again, if you need a little more support, I would love to invite you to join my membership on School. It is called the Empowered Money Circle, and we work on using YNAB, but then, like I mentioned, also working to improve our relationship with money through money mindset, a little bit of money history work, some of the deeper work that we go through together in there. So I will drop that link in the comments, and love to see you inside. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will talk to you guys again soon.